Howdy, folks, and welcome to Moose Podcast 279. How you folks doing? Well, we've had some incredible snowstorms go through, but I'm seeing many signs of spring. In fact, I've got birds checking out my boxes. I'm excited. Got to make some new boxes, I think. I'm running out of space. Well, I hope you're taking advantage of it, getting ready, because it's going to be a grand one for us wildlife photographers, aviation photographers, landscape photographers, even the few of you who shoot just coins. It's going to be a good spring. So thanks for dropping by. Also want to thank my good friends at Bedford Camera, bedfords.com. Many of you have started to spend your tax refund dollars and camera gear. No better way of doing it. Had a lot of questions about the Moose discount at Bedford's Camera. Yes, it's still there. It's still active. You put your MOOSE in the shopping cart as you check out. You will not see an instant 5% and as you did a year ago when you check out. Once your order is shipped and your credit card has been charged, you'll instantly see that 5% refunded to your credit card. So it is still very much alive and active, the Moose discount, thanks to my good friends at Bedford Camera, bedfords.com. Let's get right into this week's topic, the photograph. So here's the deal. I am very lucky to go out with some marvelous folks and experience all that is in our world when it comes to landscape and critters and aviation and people. And we have lots of great conversations. 99.999999% of it is camera settings or what lens to use. And here's my frustration. I am personally really tired of talking about that stuff. I want to talk about the photograph. The thing we're doing with all those settings and lenses, that photograph that we go and share with people. So since I'm not finding folks in which to talk about the photograph, I thought I'd have a conversation with myself about the photograph, and you can just eavesdrop in. You could kind of think of yourself as being Sharon, because she hears me mumbles about this stuff to myself all the time. So what is it about the photograph? There's a lot of aspects of the photograph that when I'm looking through the viewfinder, I am thinking about. The main one is grabbing heartstrings. No matter if it's a plane, a landscape, a critter, whatever it is, I want that photograph to reach out and grab you, the viewer. One of the main vehicles is the light. And Sharon can tell you, there's a lot of times when we are out and there's some really cool things we see unfold in front of us. And she would say, does that make a photograph? Isn't that a photograph? Why aren't you stopping for that photograph? The answer uniformly is it's the light. That light is everything. That's what makes or breaks almost all the photographs out there that, people just like because it's a cool subject or they fall in love with and they want to buy. It's that light. And speaking of which, personal timeout rant here. Since when does the word like get a heart? It drives me nuts. Getting likes is one thing, but why is it a heart as if I love it? There's a huge difference between like and love. And I think that that social like and love thing has got photographers confused, because liking something and loving something, that's what I'm talking about. Loving something to the point where it comes flooding out in your photograph. The photograph. So we have light. And how do we talk about light? We talk about it with exposure. And that has now changed with the Z9, because I find myself rarely dialing exposure compensation, because that little wizardly box, it knows me. It's bringing out the emotion I want without me having to really think about exposure. and it was bugging me for a while. What did Nikon do to that camera that all of a sudden it knows Moose's likes for exposure? And I'm telling you, since I got that camera since day one, this has really driven me nuts. And then I figured it out. It doesn't know Moose's personal exposure likes or how I want to communicate emotion with exposure. No. What the Z9 has done in that Speed 7 chip, it understands light, the very cornerstone of a photograph, the very essence of telling a visual story. It understands that light, and looking at that light, and God bless the engineer in that little cubicle who's sitting there figuring out and mapping all those little pixels from highs and lows and reds and blues and greens that did all this stuff that's over my head, way outside my wheelhouse. It understands that light and that preference. I'm helping it by telling it where I think is where it needs to be sharp, but it's figuring out that light. And that is such an essential part of the photograph, is that light. And that's why I personally believe so many photographers have the issues they do, be at the camera or at the computer or both, is that total lack of knowledge of light. And I'm going to say it, total lack of knowledge of light. For example, there's photographs of some wolves I saw, and they're backlit. You can see the sun in the background. Okay? They're backlit. Yet you can see all this information in those wolves. Will you think somebody was messing with the wolves in post? Yes, they did. You cannot have a sun in the background and have information in the shadows. It don't work that way, even with the naked eye. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to do that with your photograph, it's your photograph. It's your story. You can tell it as you want. My point is, light doesn't work that way. It doesn't come at you down the lens barrel and then makes a 90-degree turn and a 45-degree turn and light the front of your subject. Unless, of course, you're doing flash fill. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the sun coming in. I'm talking about understanding light. And, of course, if you need to use flash fill, then you need to understand what that light's doing as it comes towards your lens because it's backlit. It's the same thing at the camera and in the computer. If you want to finish for the light, you've got to understand light. It's just, I don't know, to me, almost a sin that light, the discussion of light and the photograph is just not stage, center, and front. It's so important. Let's talk about where we place the subject in the frame. When I started out way back in the days of the steam-driven camera, there was this huge conversation when it came to critters. And if, the thing was, if you were to point, or the critters on the left side of the frame, and they are looking towards the right, they got their head turned, that means they have to be on the left side of the frame to be staring into the center. Then came Bateman and his paintings. Oh, love his stuff. And what'd he do? Yeah, he's kind of thumbed his nose at that. And if the critter was looking and staring to the left, he put him on the right side of the frame. That tension that comes out in that whole placement in the frame, the story that it could tell, and the way it can grab imaginations is really powerful. Probably got my inspiration for one, not being an eyeball photographer, and two, the way I arrange elements on Bateman and his success from the beginning was monetary. And that gets my attention, okay? And two, the way it tells a story. So where do you place your subject in the frame? This is really important part of the photograph. And this really makes you as a photographer. You have all that real estate that you can work with. Now, as soon as you get to be what's used to be called an eyeball photographer, and apologize for all these old terms. I am old. If you're an eyeball photographer, you have now delegated all of that real estate to one thing, that eye, and it better have incredible light and gesture, or else all you've done is shown that you can crop and got, I don't do cropping, not in post, and I'm not an eyeball photographer because the eye, the window to the soul. There's something wrong with that. It's leaving out so much of the story. As soon as you start backing off from that, then you've done what? You've really made your photograph much more complicated, because now you have so many more elements in that frame you have to juggle. But at the same time, you have so many more elements you can arrange to tell that story. As I like to say often, is that we want to make our subject the star of the stage, and the rest of the frame, the stage. I really want to have, when people look at my critter shots, a sense of where their home is. When I do my aviation, a sense of where that plane would be in the sky. And that is arranging the rest of those elements. This then comes into what lens do we select, where do we stand, and how do we arrange the elements in the frame to do a couple things. First, the subject has to be sharp. End of statement. Okay? I'm not talking about potential blurs. Even the blurs have an element that is sharp. That's how the eye can relate to them. The subject has to be sharp. And after that, the depth of focus, it's totally up to you. And how many of those elements you want to bring in and be intimate with that subject and the viewer of your photograph. And at the same time, be secondary so they don't take away from that subject. That's a dance. That's a lot to deal with, especially if you're working quickly. But then when you can bring in light, and you bring light into this equation, then if you know light, it really is kind of simple. You understand that light and bright is the first thing the mind goes to. Then you can arrange those elements effectively, quickly in the viewfinder. And 90% of the time, you're going to get back and look at your computer monitor and go, oh, bang on, there it is. And that brings back another important thing. You know, I don't know if you knew this. Did you know that you go click with a camera, you can be done? Did you know that's legal? They actually passed a law. It says, hey, you go click with the camera and it's all done in the camera. You're golden. You don't have to do a thing in post. Because that really, I've seen so many great photographs destroyed because people think they have to do something, and you don't. You don't. It's a liberating part of photography. You can be done. But that's when you start thinking of the photograph. You're thinking about this story that's unfolding in front of you. And we are so fortunate that we can be out witnessing all these great events, bringing them back with our camera. And today the technology is the strongest, the funnest, the best that I've ever experienced, that makes the whole photographic process just so much fun. How come we can't bring that fun into our photograph? Why do we have to have these discussions about what's the best lens, what's the best body, what's the best f-stop? Why can't it be, what's the best story? What's the best way of telling that story? What's the best way of expressing yourself and the memories you've captured in a photograph? You know, there's so many quotes thrown around that I think that the point of them is kind of getting lost. But one I do like is the fact when Anzo was asked how many photographs does it take to get a good one or a great one, the answer is one. The answer is one. When you show photographs on your iPhone, your iPad, how many pictures are you showing from your adventure? Typically one. That photograph, that's what we need to have the discussions about. That is where all the improvements we can make as an individual, as a photographer, as a community, that's where it can be should be focused on, and we should be concentrating on, and we should be sharing. is that one. I talked about my encounter with the wolves in Yellowstone, and it was it was unbelievably just stunning and memorable, and it vastly replaced the last incredible memory I had with wolves. And I look at just two photographs, and I took thousands. It's just two photographs that, for myself, come together and express all that I experienced, all the emotion, all the cold air, the howling sounds, the whole thing in just two images. And those two images encompass that light, where the subject is in the frame, the stage in the world in which it lives, and then more importantly, reaching out and grabbing heartstrings. Yeah, I might have taken quite a few in that process because I wanted to tell the whole story, which I kind of unfolded in Instagram a couple weeks back because I wanted to bring people in on the journey. But when it comes to the photograph, it just takes that one. And we need to concentrate on all the elements that come into that, not the settings. Because when I show that photograph to someone, for example, I share them with Sharon, and she shares them with others. And she pulled up the one of my favorite wolf shots, one of the two, shared it with our UPS driver. He fell in love with it. He's not a photographer. He's a Montanan, fourth generation. And to him, that wolf picture just screamed Montana wilderness. That should be our goal. It's mastering that visual communication, the photograph. You guys have a great week. Thanks for dropping by. And remember to make every click your story.